How do you get your staff to solve their own problems? Hi, I am Kayla Swanson. I'm your host of Profitable Salon Podcast, and on with me today is the CEO of High Performance Salon Academy, Jason Everett. What's up, Jason? How are you?
Let's go. It's going to be a good day, man. We got a
God,
good
it
subject
is.
today. I think people solving their own problems is like the topic for people. At
I
least if
think
you
so
if you own
too.
a business, you want to know how to do this.
Yeah, I mean, because you have people coming in where they maybe have a lot of experience, they're fresh out of school, and a lot of people kind of
Sure.
come in and they're really intimidated by something new, and they don't have the experience that they need to be able to solve their own problems, make their own decisions, or it's a lot to acclimate. And so I think a lot of times people ask that question of like, how do I support my team, no matter whether they have 20 years of experience or they're fresh out of school or wherever the
Yeah.
situation is? How do you come alongside and support them in that? So I'm super stoked. You have some experience with this, yay? Nay?
A little bit. And I have some funny stories about it too. And I would just say, yeah, for sure there's the people that are like brand new that need some help with that. But I'm
Yeah.
going to say this the other way around. More of the people that I've helped have been the grown people. I'm going to call them that. The grown people that either don't know how to handle it or like they're just stubborn in their old ways.
Yeah.
And they just like, honestly, people kind of think they're lazy. They're just like, I don't know. You just tell me how to do it and I'll do it. And it's like, what happens is people become very risk averse and they don't want to, they don't want to, if somebody tells them what to do and it fails, it's not their fault if somebody told them what to do.
Yeah.
And so people get off that kind of they want to let themselves off the hook for not having to be responsible for things by asking somebody to tell them exactly what to do. And we have this society where, well, if you told me how to do it and it didn't work, I guess that's not my fault. And people just don't like responsibility at the end of the day. And if I can show you how to get people to be responsible, that is the magic. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm pumped
No
about talking
kidding.
about today.
I mean, we hear a lot of times like salon owners are like, I feel like I'm running a daycare instead of a business. And so, and a lot of
100%.
time it's like hurting
Yeah.
kitties. So what would you say to the people
Herding those
who
kitties.
hurting the little
Come
cats?
along, my kitties. Yeah.
So like they feel like that. They feel like I'm running like, and what would you say to a salon owner to how to separate that? And like, what pursuit would you put in there
Did
to
you say
change that?
kitties or kitties? I'm not
Kitties.
really sure which version, like the meow or the like, mommy. I wasn't sure which version you meant. Either way, it's still funny though.
I know. I meant like the kitties, like the meow.
Okay,
Either
you did
way.
mean kitties. Okay,
I
that's what I
did.
thought you meant. And then I realized you said daycare, and I was like, there's little kiddies.
Yeah, so kitties, like the meowing kind. They're hurting cats, like getting them all in the corral. But anyway, seriously though, they say like they focus more on like they're just trying to like damage control or trying to like they feels really chaos. People don't know how to
Yeah.
handle their team. What would you say?
Well, I mean, I think this is the end of the day. It's like, at the end of the day, a great team is somebody who shows up and the whole team assumes responsibility for the projects that they are managing, right? It's like you want everybody to be responsible. And, if people aren't responsible, what ends up happening is it puts all the pressure on the owner and the owner bears responsibility. Like I was just in like a class with my kid. We were doing a counseling session and the counselor said to us last night, they said, you're assuming a lot of responsibility for your kid right now, and you're actually protecting him from feeling the consequences of his behavior. And I was like,
Whoa.
uh-oh, what do you mean? And she goes, well, like it was my kid. So my son, I won't mention which name because I know I owe him money or something, but like, he won't put on his shoes before he walks out the door. And she's like, what if he just like walked out the door and didn't have his shoes on? I'm like, no, he'll just scream and say, I won't go to school. And I'm like, all right, well, what am I supposed to do? If you won't go to school, I got to take him to school. And she goes, no, you leave him in the house and you drive away. I'm like, what'd you just say? Like, no, like leave him in the house and go and then if he finally puts his shoes on and goes to school and you take him to school, he's got to explain to the lady at the front desk, like why he's late, what was going on. And it, like my whole life was like, what did you just say to me? And it was this big overwhelming thing. So I think what happens is we assume responsibility for others to protect them, but what we're protecting them from is from them learning the skills we're trying to teach them.
Man,
Right.
that's a powerful
And so
realization.
I think when and that was my realization yesterday with my kid, but like, if I do that with my kid, do I do that for my staff? So if I'm working with a staff member, let's say, Kylie, who's new on the staff, and I protect her for too long and I'm trying to protect her from herself or hurting herself or making bad decisions or, I'm hurting herself on the job. You know what I mean? Like saying like, oh, I don't want you to fail. So let me keep helping you and helping you and helping you and helping you. But at the end of the day, I actually want to give every staff member the opportunity to fail and correct from their own failure. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that the ability to fail and correct is what helps people move instead of preventing them from never making a mistake. And in school, we're all taught that like, do a really good job and don't make mistakes, that's what makes you successful. But
Right.
in business and in life, what makes you successful is learning how to recover from your mistakes, not from never making mistakes.
Completely, because I mean, it's impossible not to make mistakes. There's
Of
you
course.
can't know everything, and you
And
can't just avoid that
yeah.
forever.
And this is why, and this is an interesting like psychology experiment, is like most business owners, and not all, but it's like 80% of business owners did really, really poorly in school because they were the ones who always broke the rules, didn't get things right. And like what we learned, and by the way, that was me. I was not a good student. And so what I learned is if I can't get good grades, I always would find like the gray area or the new solution or some other things. I wasn't good at memorizing and getting good grades. And so I'd have to get very, very creative. And as a business owner, you have to be very, very creative. So here's the problem. You have a very, very creative problem-solving business owner, and you have a very by the book, want to get it right employee. And there's a book out there called Why A Students Work for C Students. It's a book
Mhm.
by Robert Kiyosaki. And what he talks about in that entire book, if you want to get like a full unpack of it, is he said A students are the people who get everything right and they never make mistakes. And those work for the C students who are very willing to be creative and flexible. So you already have this juxtaposition of like a C student who's running the show working with an A student doesn't want to get it wrong. And that A student doesn't want to assume responsibility unless they get given a very specific set of tasks and they can follow directions perfectly. And what he talks about, Kiyosaki in this book, is he talks about that was set up for a society of assembly line workers.
Dang.
So if you look at it, assembly line workers are supposed to not make mistakes, do exactly what they're told. And if you look at the school system and how we're set up, and this is like the bigger overarching thing here of why people don't solve problems, is like if you look at an assembly line worker, this is why you have bells in school, because they'd have like a bell that would ding or the horn that would blow in the assembly line, and then you would like leave and go do your lunch. It's very regimented. All that stuff is like we literally have a school system that was designed to spit out assembly line workers who don't make mistakes and do exactly what they're supposed to do. That was when our school system was established here in the United States. And
Whoa.
so if you want creative thinkers, which I think schools are getting a little bit better at producing some creative thinkers, and like, group programs and sports and athletics and music is starting to help some of those things happen. But you have people that are so afraid to make mistakes that they would rather be paralyzed by their own fear and doubt instead of make a mistake in front of somebody, because those A students who work for those C students are stalling out and having that problem before they even
Yeah.
begun. And that's why you have people that don't want to take responsibility because they're afraid of the red pen. They don't want a bad mark or a bad grade. So they'd rather do nothing than do something and get it wrong.
Are you tired of not knowing what your hair color is costing you? With Salon Scale, we take the guesswork out for you, so you can cover your back bar expenses, reduce your color waste, and generate more profit in your salon. Click the link in the description to get 10% off your first year.
Yeah, completely. And I think like that's such a good point. And laying it out like that makes like I can relate with that big time. And I think before we dive into how to help your staff solve those problems, there's also the other side of it as the owner, as like you have a hard time letting go of control. And so let's talk
What?
into
What
that of like
control freaks own businesses?
what control freaks?
Yeah, most business owners are people that like hated to work for somebody else. And they're like, I hate how you're doing it. I want to make up my own rules.
Yeah.
And so they leave and open their own business so they can make up their own rules, which ain't good either. It's the
No.
exact same problem.
And you
in
got those kind of
reverse.
owners come in with those kinds of employees and it mixes together. And then
Congratulations. And now you have a business.
and now you're complaining because your staff's not solving their own problems, not able to make decisions, not able to defend for themselves.
And you want to step in and be the hero because you're creative and can solve a problem, and like you get your ego boost by solving other people's problems. Like if you think of it this way, it's like you become a firefighter, and firefighters, like, no offense, I love firefighters, but I'm just saying like firefighters are there to show up and solve a big problem. And so I think we end up becoming a firefighter for our team, and we get, as a business owners, we get this ego boost out of solving a problem that nobody else can solve. And that's why you stay small as a business owner, because you're more excited to solve the problem than letting your team solve the problem.
Dang. Wow, that's a love punch for me, even, of realizing like, hey, I can come in and let me just do it. I think there's a lot of times in my life this is something I've really, really learned. I'm actually really proud to not have this as much anymore.
Yeah.
But I used to be like, let me just do it myself. Then I know for sure it's done right. And I know that it's going to be because I have like people hire up for me. And so I don't want my team under me to be like to making mistakes that then affect my job. And so sometimes it's learning not to step in and how to support my team to come up with the solutions on their own. Which is what we're talking about today.
When you can be more proud of your team winning than you are of you winning, that's when you're growing as a leader, right? It's like I work with this on the team all the time. Like, it's very interesting. It's like I've had to change over time to be like, am I getting the accolades, or is my team getting the accolades, or is the lowest member of my team getting the accolades.
Mhm.
And I think that's the really, and I say lowest, I just mean like the most entry level or the feet on the ground or whatever is like, I want them to get the accolades. I don't want the credit. And so I'm constantly passing credit. And of course I love credit. Like it's cool when somebody says,
Who
Jason, you
doesn't?
friggin' crushed it. And like, I get it. But it's like, you know, when somebody's like, man, this is a real compliment, I'm like, guys, we earned that compliment. Like, I know my name might've been involved in that, but like, it's because of what we are doing as a company, not just because of something that Jason did. And it's hard,
Totally.
man. It's hard not to
Yeah.
try and be the superstar all the time and be
I
like,
know.
look at the cool stuff I can do. But
Yeah.
that's the
'Cause you
difference
get,
between being a large owner and a small owner, you know?
yep. It is the size of your team. It's like,
Mhm.
it's more about like how like they all show up, and we all want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves too. And we
For
like, these
sure.
are our jobs. And yes, we don't own this company, but we are also putting our time and energy into something, and we want to feel like we belong there too. And I
Yeah.
think that's a really good, yeah, agreed.
But you
Making,
take ownership
giving
for the
credit.
result. I mean, without being the owner, because I mean,
Oh
ownership
yeah.
means you take the risk and the reward, and you get both. So like, there's a reward. But like, you know, if as a business owner, like you have to shell out a couple $100,000 to keep your payroll going, like that sucks.
Yeah.
It's a very different game, and most people don't want to play that game.
No.
But as an employee, you're protected from playing that game, but you still take ownership of your job, even if you don't own the business.
Exactly. Man, such good points. I hope if you're listening to this, you got a lot of love punches
Yeah,
there.
hopefully it's a good show
And if
today.
you,
Good
yeah,
show.
if you resonate with any of those things, let
Yeah.
us know. Drop a comment in the chat if you want to. I'd love to hear from you
Heck
on
yeah.
if any of those things resonate with you.
We're Forest, born on the salon floor and built for and by hair and beauty professionals like you. Forest is your marketing, your reporting, your reputation management. You need one easy-to-use system that does it all. Forest, together we grow.
Because we're going to start to dive in now on then what do we do about that? So Jason, like when an employee comes and they're like, what do I do? Help
Yeah.
me solve this problem. I can't do it on my own. What would you say?
Yeah. So let me tell you about a story. I used to work with Massage Envy, and there was a gal who was named Dale. And Dale came to me one day and she asked me this question. She goes, Jason, she's like, what am I supposed to do when people ask me stupid questions? And I was like, well, okay, what do you mean? She's like, well, they're always asking me stupid questions. I'm like, can you give me an example of this stupid question? She goes, yeah, the other day somebody came in and said, the 27th next week, what day of the week does that fall on? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a weird question to ask somebody. Like, can't you just look at a calendar? And she's like, yeah, but they don't want to look at the calendar. They want to ask me. And I'm like, well, what did you give as an answer? Now, notice what I did here. Every time she asked me a question, what did I respond back to her with?
A question.
A question. So this is a tip on number one here. And so even
Giving it
for
away.
me, I'm like, well, what did they ask you? I said, what did they ask you? How did you handle it? Like, I'm asking all these questions. And I said, so what did you do when they asked you the question? She said, the 27th is on a Thursday, damn it. Now get out of my office. And I said, hey, Dale, now this is like, I asked. Now it's my time to drop some knowledge. So I was like, hey, Dale, so if they could look at a calendar and solve their problem, or they could ask you, notice I'm still asking a question, why do you think they asked you the question? And she said, because I'm faster than looking at the calendar. And I was like, oh, interesting. So again, notice I asked a question. So what would happen if you said, that's a great question, you should look that up? What would happen if you just turned it back on them and let them solve their own problem? And she's like, they'd probably stop asking me. And I said, yeah, you're right. They would stop asking you because you currently are the fastest solution to their problem. So they all come to you because you're the shortcut. So you've created yourself an important position for you to be the unofficial shortcut in the business of what would happen. So she stopped answering questions, and she's probably a little dramatic at it first when she did it, but she like stopped answering questions. Like, that's a great question. I'm not answering it for you. And I was like, well, maybe like give them something back. Be like, that's great. Where could you find the answer?
Yes.
And like just some things like that. And so what started happening is they started turning it around. They stopped asking her what she considered stupid questions, and they were solving those small things. Now, I think sometimes people can come to you with real problems like, hey, we have this problem with a client. How do I handle it? And you can there's another turnaround question. It's like, that's a great question. What do you think we should do?
Totally.
Right. And like, I know this sounds silly because the problem is, as an owner, you do have the answer. And the amount of self-control that you have to exercise to not give them the answer is insane, especially if you've been conditioned through going all the way through high school, junior high, elementary school, junior high school is like the teacher has all the answers and you just have to ask the teacher and the teacher knows. So you just assume that role of teacher and you go, well, I have all the answers, just come see me, versus where could you go to find out that answer? How could you solve that on your own? If you did know the answer, what would it be? And like, sometimes those questions in the very beginning, like punch people in the face and like, screw you, don't you know? Why are you gatekeeping, right? That's a whole term. Why are you gatekeeping this from me? Is like, I'm trying, or I'm attempting, or I am working to help you solve your own problems so that you level up right now.
I love that. And I think even more like an additional thought, and if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know if I could do that, it's like not
Try it,
only just
man.
that you have the answer, is also realizing and creating an environment in your salon where your staff knows that I have a answer, not necessarily the
Yeah.
answer, but
Yes.
a answer. And you could have an answer too that could also be just as applicable. Like I have my way I would handle it, but I want to hear from you. How would you handle it? And
Yeah. And
creating that open space.
what if they have a better answer than your
Literally.
answer? Like that's, I mean, Kayla, we just talked about this the other day, right? Is like Kayla and I have the phrase I invented for Kayla, right? And we were just talking about this the other day, is that you have, for the years that you've worked for me, you've always come to me and been like, hey, what about this? And I was, for a long time, I was like, no.
Literally.
And then I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That's not how we do things here. And like in a good way, you were persistent and you kept, trying to get it done. And then I evolved to a new answer for you that was like, hey, why don't you try it and you can prove me wrong with numbers? Meaning if you generate the result, I won't question it. Like feel free. And I gave you the latitude and the space to be able to go test your idea. And a lot of times, probably most of the time, you would win. You would win.
Literally.
And you'd come back and like, haha, look at what I did. And like,
Because it's highly motivating.
Nice way.
I was like, okay, I will.
and for you, you're motivated by, like, in a good way, proving me wrong. I mean, not in a bad negative, like,
right.
But
but I like to.
You were like, hey, let me show you. Like, hey, I'm going to prove this is going to work. And then you would go and prove it. And so I would kind of say no or say maybe. And like, you're welcome to try. I'll give you the latitude. I'll give you the space. I'll give you whatever. And you come back and prove it over and over again that you do have the ability to problem solve in a way that I don't normally problem solve. And it's to your benefit.
Ready to transform your business and improve your salon's profitability? With Lonza's 3-in-1 technology and intermixable shades, your hair color inventory is streamlined with limitless creativity behind the chair. Click the link below to unveil the secret to salon success.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, you don't create enough as an owner. You don't create enough safety for them to have that space to do it because they want to know exactly what to do. So sometimes what happens, you got to realize that if your team is not coming to you with answers, it's because either you've been a bully and when their answer didn't work, you're like, see, I told you I had the answer, or you chastise your team when they make a mistake. You're like, hey, you can never let that happen again. And I was just onboarding some new team. And I said, listen, man, it's totally fine to make a mistake once or twice. If you make the mistake once or twice and you correct, I'm good. But if you make it 3, 4, 5 times, we got a problem. That means you're not doing something right. But if you make a mistake in learning, I'm good to go. Like, great. And I've done that before. We've done it with hires and with all kinds of things. I'm like, sometimes we've hired people and I'm like, I don't think that person's going to stay. And I'm like, but I can either say, need to fire that person right away because I can see something you can't. Or I give you the opportunity to learn the experience points for you to learn, because I got to remember, I've hired hundreds of people. Yes. That new person maybe has only hired 3, so they don't see the same things that I see. And my job is to level up the people around me so they get my experience from their actions and my insights, not just from my knowledge. Because if they need my knowledge to act and operate, then I'm constantly required by the business, and my goal is to not be required.
Exactly. Which is the goal for, hopefully, if you're listening to this, hopefully that's your goal too. It's not be required by your own business.
Yeah. Is get yourself to a place where that's not the issue.
Yeah. And surrounding yourself with people you can trust, and you're not going to know if you can trust your team unless you get the opportunity to run with something. And I think one of the, like we were just
allow them to fail
and allow them to fail. And I used to think, like, somebody asked me that day what my favorite part about working in this company. I was like, oh, that it's okay to fail. But I think that my favorite part is like, it's okay to fail as long as you're learning from the mistakes that you're making.
Totally.
Like it's
fail
okay
forward,
to fail forward. And that is one of my favorite things that I've learned is I'm not afraid of the mistakes that I've made, because now when I make them, I'm like, whoops, my bad. Okay, let's figure it out. Let's figure out how not to solve that problem, not make the mistake twice, and learn from those. Because you can tell really quickly when you give people the space to be able to run with what they want to do in their ideas. It's like when that shift happened for me, and I was able to even run with my ideas, even just to prove you wrong or to accomplish something
in a nice way.
In a nice way, yeah. Even just like it allowed me to expand my creativity and be okay. Well, how then if I want the idea to work, how do I make it work? And then when it didn't work, sometimes it would take me 6 months to have those numbers that proved it wrong. Yeah, because true. But I'm still pursuing it and pursuing my ideas, and it allowed me the ability to open up and think of ideas, and even come to you and be like, hey, I have more ideas now, and to be able to grow and build upon that, because that safe space was then starting to build on itself. And that's what we're saying with your team. Create a safe space that they feel like they're also included, that they are smart too. They may not own the business, they may not have worked for 15 years in the business, but they do have ideas, and we want to feel like we're a part of something, and getting to make decisions, make mistakes, and have ideas to solve problems will make your team blossom and feel more a part of your company.
Agreed. Yep. 100%.
Yes. Nice. So good, man. I love this topic. It's like he's all fired up.
That's a good one, man. It's a good one.
I think it's because for me, learning to solve my own problems has been a powerful learn in my entire life.
Yeah.
I've really
Yeah.
learned it at work and then being able to apply it. And that's why it's such a powerful thing, because you as the owner will get to have less responsibility, less like requirement, like we said earlier, and you'll have a team that you can actually depend on to make decisions for you or to be able to problem solve, which brings me to my
Yeah.
next question.
Yeah.
You
Go ahead.
want to say?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Nice. Because I want to know, like, so then people are like, well, yeah, but like there are certain problems that I don't want to let go of. What would you say to the owner who's like, well, but
Right.
how do I know which problems that I'm okay with them
Yeah.
making? And that, like, how do you
It's a
know
good
that
question.
line?
Are you ready to increase your retention and revenue and convert website traffic to clients? Then you're ready for Maya. Maya creates better business relationships by pairing the right clients with the right beauty professionals. Use promo code HPSA for your first 2 months free. Visit joinmaya.com to get started.
There's some interesting books on that. There's a book called The Decision Tree that kind of says like what's a leaf decision, what's a branch decision,
Nice,
what's a trunk decision, what's a root decision. So for example, like this just came up the other day, is somebody was solving a problem and they had to solve it and it cost a couple $100 to solve the problem. And I'm like, well, they spent a couple $100 solving a problem, but it made $12,000. And I was like, well, okay, are we willing to spend a couple $100 to make $12,000? Yes, of course we are. And what was interesting is, we've had this conversation internally, is like, what level of dollar amount can you solve with or without approval? So for example, in your company, you might say to your front desk, like how crazy would it be if you said to your front desk or your sales desk, you said, hey, if this is a $50 to $100 problem or less, could you just solve it? And like, I trust you to make that decision. And like, I'll back you to the wall. Cause like, let me just say this. If you're an owner and you're jumping in to solve a $25 problem, like you're probably wasting your time. And all you have to do is at the end of the week, be like, hey, how was that thing? And they're like, well, I did this. I did this. Like, well, okay. I might not have done it that way. In the future, I do it this way. But like just the fact that you had somebody else solve it, it saved you probably that 25 to $50. Now, at different levels of people, you might have a manager or a director. You might say, hey, you can solve a problem that's a $500 problem or a $1,000 problem. And like different people on my team can solve problems at different levels. So like directors on my team can solve a $1,000 problem, but if it's over $1,000, they need to involve me in the process. And that's kind of like the leaf decision is like, as long as it's free, you can solve it. A branch decision is like $50. A trunk decision might be $100, but then a root decision is like $1,000 or more. So if you look at it in terms of like dollar amount solve of the problem, that's a really big deal. Or like if it really won't affect too many people, you can go ahead and make that call. Tony, what's his name? Tony Haish from Zappos, the late Tony Haish, before he passed away. He had some really interesting strategies at Zappos about solving problems. And there's a famous story about him that he allowed his team to solve any problem for less than like $200, and it was like every single person on his team. And there was a story where this woman had bought some shoes, and she bought some shoes and returned a couple of them, but they were past the return date. And like the customer service person was on the phone, and the lady said, I need to return these shoes. And they're like, sorry, ma'am, you're after your return date. And she goes, well, it's for my late husband. Like he passed away and I ordered these shoes for him and he never put the shoes on. And now the customer service rep could have been like, hey, sorry, like after the return policy, but the customer service person, you know what, we'll take care of you on that. They went ahead and returned the shoes. And then they actually sent flowers and said, sorry for your loss. And like, we really, what a terrible thing to have gone through. I hope that at least by returning the shoes, like it gives you some sense of that and you don't have to stare at those shoes anymore. And I want to, and it was like a nice little note they sent out for like $60 for flowers or whatever for this woman. And like, that's the kind of customer service that Zappos was known for, is that they would do things way out of the ordinary because they empowered their employees to make decisions that the owner of the company might not have made that call, but like as a human being, it was a good call to make.
Yeah.
And so
that
that's
lady
where
will
like
be telling other people for a long time.
And
that
that's what
story
they
will
said
spread.
is they're like, she'll buy her shoes from that company forever. You know what I mean? Just
that
because
stuff
of
sticks.
Yeah. And I think that's the idea, is you want to be able to empower people to make those decisions, and you'll start to see your team blossom when they can make those. So that's my quick thoughts on that.
Dang, no kidding. Yeah. And I think it's a good distinction between of like, yeah, what is the boundaries for you? And you have to decide that for yourself. I think the whole premise of the tree is then you lay it out, like, what do you feel comfortable doing? And then once you make that plan, like relook at it as an owner and be like, okay, where am I holding on too much control? Where am I trying to not give that, not let go of my own salon or my own way of wanting things done in order to let my team start to fly and pursue it for themselves.
Yep.
So when people walk in and like the owner's listening, if you're listening to this and you're just like, yeah, I still don't really know how this kind of plays out. When you have somebody comes into your
specific tactic.
Yes, we're ready. We're down to the specific tactics. There's a
Good.
couple minutes we have left of when somebody walks in and is like, hey, I have a problem. What do I do?
Yeah. So one of my friends, a guy named Dan Martell, buddy of mine, he has a book called Buy Back Your Time. Great book. Love it. He talks about how to get people to think for themselves so they don't bother you for things all the time. That's part of that thing. And he has a method in there called the 1-3-1 method. 1-3-1 is
one of my favorite methods.
Yeah. And we use it all around here all the time, but full credit to Dan. That's his idea. But it's you come with one problem. You come with your 3 solutions that you think are possible. And then you decide which of those solutions that you would probably do. So if you came to me and said, hey, Jason, I need to buy this thing, but we don't have the money. I would go, well, okay, we could sell something in order to buy it. We could pull money out of my own personal bank account, or we could, run a new promotion and then get the money for it. And then if you were the manager, you would say, great, which of those 3 do you think we should do? And I go, well, I don't know. Which one do you want? Like, no, you pick one to let me know. And this happens with assistants and other things. I'm like, hey, what I want you to do is come with 3 options, 3 flight options. You tell me which one you would think. And here's the really important part. You give me the rationale behind why you chose that. And then I will tell you which one I'm going to pick also. And then hopefully you'll adjust your rationale with my rationale and your rationale, because you might use that rationale to buy the thing or book the flight or whatever it is. And it might be very logical. You're like, well, this one's cheaper. And I'm like, well, cheaper is not necessarily the only factor that I have, or this would get us there faster, or this would whatever. And I'm like, that is an important factor. And here's another important factor to me. And now all of a sudden, now I'm in a mode where I'm teaching you based on what I'm weighing in on, and I'm learning your habits and your behaviors. And so what's happening is in 2 ways, you're learning how I think, I'm learning how you think, and I'm training you in that process. And then what starts to happen, I've done this with a lot of assistants, is like, hey, come to me with that 1-3-1. And then after a while, like now, like some of my team has been around for 3 and 4 years. They just come to me and go, here's a problem. This is how I'm solving it. Are you cool with that? I'm like, yep. I'm like, yeah, sure am. And now they don't even come to me anymore. They're like, I got it. They're like, I already handled it. I hope that's okay. And like, I love that. I love when people come to me and they're like, yeah, so here's how I handle that. And now this is what happens. They literally come to me and say, hey, this came up. Here's how I handled it. Do you have any feedback, or would you have handled it any differently? That's beautiful. That is like beautiful. The magic, right? Is like, oh, this guest complained. We went ahead and took care of their service. We rebooked this, and we did this, and we responded to their complaint online. And like, your job should be high freaking 5, right? Like, job, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And no, I'm good. That's awesome. Or in a very kind way, like, well, and I always, me, I always have something I would add to it. I'm like, there's always like, I'm like, well, next time I would add this one little thing too. And like, hopefully it's just an upgrade. Like, I'll upgrade everything all the time. But like, hey, if I have any thoughts, great. Or if I don't, like, good to go. And I don't think you should ever take that as like if there's, I'm looking for him to never have any upgrades. But I think as a business owner, you're constantly looking to solve it. So you can get your ego out of the way, use the 1-3-1 method, or several other methods, and just really give people the opportunity to just, celebrate their mistakes, learn those as lessons, and help them correct very quickly. I think it'll move you forward.
Yes. I think if you take anything away, take mostly the takeaway that get into the habit of allowing your team to think for themselves, whether you ask them more questions back, get them to think for themselves. And that is all the time we have for today. We could talk about this, Jason, for so long. And I really appreciate all the insights and things like that. For me, this has been something that has changed my life at work and outside of work. So support your team in changing their mindset around what they are capable of. They can make mistakes. They can solve their own problems. And it starts with you empowering them to do so and allowing them the space to do that and be able to direct, not control. And that's everything.
Yeah, and if you guys want any help with that, or you want some coaching or some advice on that, do me a favor and say coaching in the comment section for this episode, and we'll happily get on the phone with you with one of our team, and you can kind of figure out how do you coach people through that and how do you get better at it. We'd love to help you and support you and be part of what we do inside the Academy. Thanks for having me on today, Kayla. I appreciate you.
Always a pleasure, Jason. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time on the Profitable Salon Owner Podcast. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Profitable Salon Owner Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a review, and check us out at profitablesalon.com for more episodes, content, and to help you turn your salon into the business you've always dreamt of.